The dreams of crowns had seemed to haunt House Greyjoy throughout its long history. Often as not, it ends in defeat, despair and death, as it did for Balon Greyjoy. The writings of Maester Yandel, The World of Ice and Fire. With the downfall of Harren the Black during Aegon's conquest, House Greyjoy would rise up and fill the power vacuum left behind by House Hoare, who had been kings of the Isles and Rivers for generations. In ancient times, like most of the houses of the Iron Islands, the Greyjoys of Pyke claimed descent from the Grey Kings of the Age of Heroes. During the era of the Driftwood Kings, Salt Kings and Rock Kings, the Greyjoys, while a large and powerful house, did not boast as many kings as their neighbours in House Greyiron and Goodbrother. We do not know exactly how many Greyjoy kings ruled the Iron Islands, as much of their history of this time was not recorded, but there are 3 named Greyjoy kings who were crowned High King of the Iron Islands: Loror, Theon III, and Balon V. Given this, it is likely there were many more Greyjoy kings during this era. The Iron Lords, including the Greyjoys, intermarried with the victorious Andals when they invaded the Iron Islands, and they also allied with Andals against the Greyiron kings. But House Greyjoy would become the undisputed power of the Iron Islands in the wake of Aegon's conquest. At the time of Aegon's conquest, King Harren the Black of House Hoare ruled all the lands between the mountains from the Neck to the Blackwater Rush, when Harren and his sons perished in the burning of Harrenhal by King Aegon I Targaryen. He granted the Riverlands to Lord Edmund Tully of Riverrun, one of the first River Lords to turn on Harren and join the conquest. The surviving lords of the Iron Islands who were not at Harrenhal, as one might expect, given what we know of the Ironborn, fell into chaotic squabbling, leading Aegon to invade the islands to subdue them. After they bent the knee, Aegon allowed them to revive their ancient custom of the Kingsmoot and choose who should have the lordship of the islands from those amongst them. They chose Lord Vickon Greyjoy of Pyke. Since Vickon's election at the end of the conquest, the Greyjoys have ruled the Iron Islands as the Lord Reapers of Pyke. As King Aegon now followed the faith of the Seven and had been anointed by the High Septon at Oldtown, Vickon reluctantly allowed the Septons and Scepters of the Faith to return to the Iron Islands after their brutal expulsion centuries before, once again angering many of the priests of the Drowned God and many of his more pious lords, an issue that still persists on the Isles today. Vickon's son, Goren, who succeeded his father in 33 AC, defeated a rebel claiming to be the priest king, Lodos the Twice Drowned, in 37 AC. As a reward, King Aenys I Targaryen, the eldest son of the Conqueror, granted Goren any boon within his power to give. Goren requested permission to expel the Septons and Scepters in the Iron Islands, which Aenys was forced to allow. This would go on to sour Aenys' own relations with the faith further and contributed to the faith uprising that ultimately led to his downfall. House Greyjoy and the Ironborn would very much keep to themselves for the better part of a century, until 129 AC and the outbreak of the Targaryen Civil War, known as the Dance of the Dragons, fought between King Aegon II and Queen Rhaenyra. The women of the West prefer men of iron to cowardly lions, it would seem, for they jump into the sea and plead with us to take them. Dalton Greyjoy to Tyler Lannister, Fire and Blood, under the Regents, the Hooded Hand. During the dance, Lord Dalton Greyjoy, known in the history books as the Red Kraken, was offered the office of Master of Ships and a place on the small council of King Aegon II Targaryen in exchange for an alliance. Preferring Rhaenyra Targaryen's offer over Aegon's, Dalton sided with the Black faction instead. He raided along the western coast of Westeros during the remainder of the war, pillaging much wealth and even bringing back captives to the Isles, despite this being outlawed by King Jaehaerys I Targaryen. Following war's end, and into the regency of King Aegon III, Dalton was commanded to cease his raiding by the Regency Council and Lord Protector of the Realm, Unwin Peake, but he ignored them, seeing the authority of House Targaryen as weak. King Aegon III's regents eventually sent Lord Alan Velaryon to the Westerlands to deal with Dalton. Before Alan could sail around Westeros to deal with the Red Kraken, however, Dalton was murdered at Faircastle by a woman named Tess. He would be succeeded by his eldest salt son, Lord Torrhen Greyjoy, amidst a struggle for power among the ironborn that was resolved fairly quickly. Much like before the dance, House Greyjoy would stabilise the Iron Islands for the rest of the Targaryen era of Westeros. During this time, a Lord Dalton Greyjoy sought new lands to conquer beyond the Lonely Light, failing much like every other attempt to do so. A Lord Aegon Greyjoy raided the coastal areas of the Seven Kingdoms, sacking the town of Little Dosk during the reign of King Aerys I Targaryen. A Lord Baron Stark gathered swords, and House Lannister built ships in an effort to drive Lord Dagon and his Iron Men back to the Iron Islands. Dagon was ultimately unable to resist the might of House Targaryen. The Iron Islands supported the Iron Throne during the War of the Ninepenny Kings against the Band of Nine and Maelys Blackfire, with Lord Quillian Greyjoy leading 100 longships to fight in the Stepstones. During his time as Lord, Quillian outlawed thraldom and wanted to integrate the Iron Islands into the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. Thus, he pursued neutrality during Robert's Rebellion in an attempt to do this. But encouraged by his sons, however, Quillian joined the rebels after Prince Rhaegar Targaryen's death at the Battle of the Trident. But by this time, in reality, most of the war was very much over. To much surprise, the Lord of the Iron Islands was killed in battle at the Manda in the Reach. Quillian was succeeded by his eldest surviving son, Lord Balon Greyjoy, who rejected his father's works and ideas of closer relations with the rest of Westeros and wanted to return to the old way of paying the iron price, reaving and pillaging. Balon spent 5 years building an iron fleet, believing that the new king Robert Baratheon and his reign was weak and only held up by the gold and reputation of Tywin Lannister. "You may take my head, but you cannot name me traitor. No Greyjoy ever swore an oath to a Baratheon," Balon said. "Swear one now, or lose that stubborn head of yours," replied Robert Baratheon. An exchange between King Robert Baratheon and Lord Balon Greyjoy from the World of Ice and Fire. In 289 AC, Balon declared himself King of the Iron Islands, the first Iron King for near on 300 years. In a bid for independence from the Iron Throne, the Greyjoy Rebellion had some early victories before the rest of the Seven Kingdoms were prepared for a war, destroying the Lannister fleet at anchor at Lannisport and raiding the western coast almost uncontested. But Balon had misjudged Robert's position. The mainland rallied their support for Robert, and the Iron Islands were invaded by the king, his brother Lord Stannis, Lord Eddard Stark, Lord Tywin Lannister, and Sir Barristan Selmy. Balon lost his 2 eldest sons in the war, and although Robert pardoned the would-be king in return for bending the knee, Balon's surviving son Theon was sent to Winterfell to be a ward and hostage of Lord Eddard Stark, leaving him only his daughter Asha in his care. Balon Greyjoy would remain peaceful for the rest of Robert's reign. It was only with the outbreak of the War of the Five Kings in the wake of Robert Baratheon's death and the execution of Eddard Stark did Balon once again call himself king. House Greyjoy have always been a major house in the Iron Islands, and they were rightly king several times before. But that is what makes the Iron Islands so different from the mainland Westeros. How quickly kings rise and fall, how fleeting kingship for each house was. As of now, House Greyjoy is the power in the Iron Islands, but as history shows us, their fall could happen at even the most unexpected time.